Momentum is building. Now let's see what the charts actually confirm. This is Bitcoin on Point, where I give you the only news that matters and the cleanest technical analysis to trade the largest digital asset in the world, Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is sending very clear structural signals right now, but direction, however, is still not confirmed. I always emphasize this, guys. We wait for confirmation. Now, on the higher time frames, key levels are holding as support, but the lower time frames are in the middle of a liquidity hunt between supply and demand. And price is actually behaving very similar to how accumulation and redistribution phases usually do. This isn't chaos. This is market setting traps before resolution. Now, before we go deeper into the charts, let's zoom out, because whilst price is consolidating, the fundamentals and infrastructure keep on strengthening. Let's look at mining, which the difficulty levels keep on rising. Bitcoin mining difficulty reached 148.2 trillion in its final 2025 adjustment and is projected to rise further to 149 trillion on January the 8th, 2026. Now, this tells us something very important, and that's that miners do not increase investment if confidence is collapsing. Now, rising difficulty, what does it mean? Well, it typically means more capital is committed, the stronger the network security is getting, we have long-term conviction that's still intact. This is a structural signal, not a short-term trade. Now, let's look at Bitcoin as a monetary check, because Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong says Bitcoin is good for USD, noting it acts as a check and balance against high inflation and deficit spending. This isn't anti-dollar rhetoric. This is Bitcoin being framed as monetary infrastructure, by far from speculation. And the narrative matters most during these periods of consolidation, not at euphoric tops. Now, tokenization is accelerating fast. Just in, tokenized stocks climbed to all-time high, nearing $1 billion in market cap, soaring 2,695% year to date. I don't know about you, but this is a massive signal. It shows that capital is actively moving towards on-chain settlement, tokenized real-world assets, blockchain native financial rails. This is the same infrastructure shift that Bitcoin and Ethereum sit at the center of. Now, keep that macro context in mind as we move back to price action. And on the monthly time frame, Bitcoin is sitting on a very important trend line, one that's been guiding it ever since 2023. Now, at this moment in time, Bitcoin has seen a 37 to 38% correction. We are still holding above this trendline support, but there is a major demand zone below that Bitcoin could sweep and initially turn this previous trendline into resistance, build some sort of base, and then look forward to building its neck out of the woods. For now, the macro trendline support is the major defense. But again, if that is lost, there is a key demand zone on the previous highs from April of 2024, sitting at roughly $74,000 to $75,000. So despite all the noise on the lower time frames, the primary trend has not been broken. As long as the monthly holds, this remains consolidation and correction, not a confirmed trend reversal. Now, on the weekly chart, Bitcoin is still consolidating. We don't have any expansion. We don't have any breakdowns. We're literally caught between support and resistance, with the major resistance being $90,000 and the key support sitting at $83,000. There is a massive weekly order block below, which sits on the lows from April of 2025. So if Bitcoin does initially sweep the local lows of $84,000, the potential to come back into this weekly order block and build a stronger base is definitely on the cards. And this is telling us that the market is absorbing supply, letting liquidity build, essentially preparing for a much larger move. Weekly structure supports patience, guys, not prediction. Now, zooming out to the daily chart, Bitcoin has broken its trend line, but has once again failed at supply. We have $90,000, which on the weekly time frame is the upper resistance of our consolidation range that is being met as resistance on every attempted breakout. So instead of breaking through supply, we've initially ran into it, rejected, rotated back lower. This isn't confirmation. This is unfinished business. Let's put it that way. This is unfinished business for Bitcoin. We still have this ascending level of support that's been holding since late November, and we do have this resistance, descending resistance on our head. Nonetheless, the daily time frame is squeezing inside an apex and needs acceptance above supply before any bullish continuation can arise. So right now we are literally stuck between supply at $90,000 and major support roughly at $84,000 to $83,000. And to me, this just explains the chop over the last few weeks. Now, zooming in even further to the 2-hour time frame. Today, we actually tapped into the buy side liquidity and our supply zone of $90,000, which has been correlating with the major level of resistance on the higher time frames throughout the video. So at this moment in time, we did sweep into that buy side liquidity, but saw rejection at supply and straight away got pushed back down. So this move created additional sell side liquidity below, and markets typically don't stop after creating either side of liquidity hunts. They usually go after it before attempting sustained upside. So even if Bitcoin does fail to lose this curve, which is currently sitting on as support, if we do see rejection, we simply look from the lows back in the 2-hour demand zone from late December at $84,000. Just keep in mind on the daily and on the weekly right now, we are stuck between that major level of resistance at $90,000 and $84,000 as support. So, you know, the more you zoom in, the more evident it actually gets here. Now, we're not going to stop here. Let's zoom into the 1-hour time frame because Bitcoin is potentially forming a Wyckoff style structure. And it's very clear to see that we have these major liquidity sweeps. We create these springs and retests and then run back into supply before ranging again and ultimately tapping up to supply once more today before seeing rejection. Now, what this is showing us is that this isn't random. It basically explains the chop over the last sort of few days, and it's technically liquidity engineering. This is the hunt, right? Between supply at $90,000 and support at $84K. It's pretty evident that this is Wyckoff going on, and it keeps everybody on edge. So when we actually stack this together for Bitcoin, macro, the network strength is rising, institutional framing is improving, and tokenized stocks have nearly hit $1 billion in market cap year to date. We also have the Bitcoin monthly demand zone and trend line that currently holds and acts as our defense mechanism. The weekly time frame is evidently in a period of consolidation with a massive weekly order block below. The daily time frame is showing levels of resistance and support, squeezing into an apex with supply at $90,000 and support at $84,000, sorry. And then zooming in even further to the lower time frames, it's evident to see the liquidity hunt and the balance and potential Wyckoff structure. So this is a setup phase, not necessarily an execution phase. We wait for confirmation. So now let's look at Ethereum, which actually has a rather cleaner chart perspective to Bitcoin. And on the 4-hour time frame, we did have this massive liquidity sweep into our 4-hour supply at $3,000, but again we started to roll back over and fell below the bullish OB. So what we actually need to see now is an ultimate reaction. Above the OB would signal the bulls stepping in to push back into supply, but rejecting from it and actually resorting back to more depression, we could see a pullback into the 4-hour demand zone, which sits roughly at $2,700 from the lows of the 18th of December. So it's all about closing, above or below this order block. Right now, ETH does sit below it on its 4-hour time frame, but both scenarios are still constructive. We wait for confirmation with demand below and imminent supply above. Now, when we zoom out to ETH on the daily time frame, if we can close above this trend line, we may continue the bullish momentum. We did see a run up towards $3,000 today, which is the supply, and have seen a strong push back down with this large facing wick. So the bulls do need to step in over the next couple of days. There is this ascending trend line of support that the ETH could hold here if we are to see the rebound and actually reclaim this trend line and turn it back into support. If we manage to get it, ETH is looking for a push back up to the highs that it's fallen from, roughly at $3,200. Failing to hold as support, then it's evident to see that ETH does have this support below as well, which sits at 2.7K. Okay, so reclaiming this trend line is bullish for the bulls, and actually rejecting from this trend line would signal a pushback into key demand areas. So at this moment in time for ETH, it's actually showing controlled strength, not necessarily weakness, and we simply again wait for confirmation amidst all of this choppy price action. So on both accounts for Bitcoin and Ethereum, we should let the setup actually finish its formation. This is not the moment to force any direction. We simply await for decisions amongst these consolidation periods. Now, Bitcoin is holding long-term structure. The monthly is intact. We have key demand below. The weekly is also in a consolidation phase, waiting to make up its mind, and the lower time frames evidently show a potential Wyckoff structure, breaking down the actual chop that's been going on for the last few days. Ethereum is in the middle of actually sweeping liquidity. We have 4-hour supply and 4-hour demand with resistance at $3,000 and support at 2,700. And zooming out back to the daily, there's a very important trend line that the bulls must close above to maintain the bullish momentum, or resort coming back down to key support, as we mentioned, at $2,700 in the 4-hour demand territory. So what we really need to take away, again, waiting for confirmation, what backs this up is the opportunity actually comes after the market confirms, not before it. So we should stay patient, watch reactions, and let the structure lead. Now, if you want to support the channel, the links below are there for you. You can trade on the platform we use, get feed discounts and bonuses. It's completely optional, but it really helps the channel grow. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next update.